Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you on our next panel that, as you may have already noticed, will be held solely in English, thus making it our conference, Politics versus Pop Culture, truly international. My name is Daniel, and I was given the honor to be a moderator of this panel. The theme of it is Between Movie and Music, Politics and Pop Culture. And I welcome our honored guests that have decided to present their essays in English. And those fine persons are Ms. Fatma Edemen from Jagiellonian University with topic about Dracula, Between Time and Culture. Ms. Yuliia Nykonenko, also from Jagiellonian University, with essay about Russian films about World War II, constructing heritage, reading history and shaping national identity. Next will be Ms. Joanna Świt, as well from Jagiellonian University, with topic The Girls and the Political Japanese Popular Literature at the Beginning of the 20th Century. Fourth prelegent is Mr. Tomasz Waśkiel from University of Wroclaw, with topic Historical Heroes as a Response to Borat, Kazakh Cinema as a Nation Branding Tool. And last but not least is Mr. Cezary Pachnik from University of Bialystok with his analysis of political matters in MD House series between liberal manifesto and critique of American liberalism. With us, there's also my colleague Kacper, who will be my co-host in this panel in case something bad happened to me.
Hi.
Yeah. As we can see, there's a big variety of topics that we shall hear about today. And so let's cut to the chase. Let's begin with the vampire vibes and Miss Fatma Edemen. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you. So just a second, let me share my screen, my presentation with you. Okay. So today I will talk about these three different narratives of Dracula. So first I need to, of course, start with who is Dracula. Actually, we're talking about like real historical personality. So this is Vlad Tepes. He was the voivode of Wallachia. 3 times between 1448 and 1477, and his father, actually, Vlad Dracul, Vlad II, was an important person, rewarded by King Sigismundus I Luxembourg of Hungary for his services in fighting against the Ottoman Empire for the sake of Christianity against Muslims, which will be this important for our further discussion. So after his father, of course, Vlad III came to power. He known as impaling people on wooden stakes, and it was his favorite method of execution. Actually, his name always known with horror and blood, we can say. So the Dracula legend firstly appeared in Germany and then spread to all Europe. And because of his reputation about his tortures, Dracula's name, again, like I said, always associated with blood and horror. And Bram Stoker, a British writer, inspired by these historical events and characters while writing his novel Dracula. What is important in his novel is he actually took vampire myth and Dracula myth together. There were also like many vampire stories, of course, before Stoker. Again, like I said, it started with German poems, actually, later in Italian and French, and later in English. But the first novel that we can talk about is Bram Stoker's famous Dracula. So the difference, the historical background, this historical background actually allowed here, Bram Stoker's Dracula and these books. Actually, this historical relation narrative allowed Ali Rıza Seyfi, another writer from Turkey, to adapt this book. Or we can even say, actually, plagiarism about this book. Because Alireza Seyfi was living in the Ottoman Empire time and later the first years of the Turkish Republic. And he knew how to read and write in English, which was not that common at that time. And then probably he read Dracula, as far as we know, and then he said, okay, I can rewrite this with the connections with the Turkish history. He focused on the historical background of the conflict between Vlad Tepes and the Turks, Ottomans. And he called this book, he named this book as Kazaklı Voyvoda. As we can see with this Arabic alphabet, he wrote this book in Ottoman Turkish, not the modern Turkish as we are using today. And he named this book, as I said, Kazaklı Voyvoda, which means Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler, Kazaklı Voyvoda, focused on this historical conflict. And this book can be considered as different kind of translation also. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, the narrative consists of diaries and letters. Alireza Seyfi uses the same dates and events in his book. Even it can be said that he only changed some parts of Dracula and made it shorter. Yeah. So, after 25 years, Kazaklı Voyvoda adapted. This book actually published in 1928. And we have to consider that Turkish Republic was only 5 years old, and very same year, government established a new law to use Latin alphabet, but this book didn't affect it from this. However, the law was pretty new, like I said. After 25 years, Kazaklı Voyvoda adapted to screen as Dracula Istanbul'da, which means Dracula in Istanbul. In 1953, directed by Mehmet Muhtaç, and in 1997, with the help of cinema critic and historian Giovanni Scognamillo, we can see him here, who also known as the real vampire in Turkey. This is another myth. He translated the book into modern Turkish. This was also the 100th anniversary of the Bram Stoker's Dracula. So that's why it was important. So if we have to see that Alireza Seyfi's rewriting has nationalist characteristics. He gave characters meaningful names, like nationalist names. Also, he changed these characters. For example, Turkish Mina is not a girl who is sitting at home like in the British version, but she is an idealist young assistant teacher. So. And almost all of the male characters in Turkish Dracula, they're all war heroes, as far as we know. And like I said, this narrative is really nationalist. Even they're not even using, when they're talking about being Turkish, like nation, they're directly refer as all race. And they're talking about when they are talking about Turkish history, they say all races history. Of course, the location changes too. In Dracula, Count Dracula goes to London after Transylvania, and as it can be understood from its modern version name, Seyfi's Dracula goes to Istanbul. Seyfi's characters think that Dracula has chosen Istanbul because of historical conflicts, and many times they referred his real aim is to drink Turkish blood. Not just some creature wants to drink blood, but he is thirsty for Turkish blood, actually. And the screen, before we are talking about this main three films, I need to talk about the screen adaptations. As far as we know, the first screen adaptation of Dracula featured in 1920 in Russia. But there is no evidence of this film. This is like really common thing in especially film heritage studies. Maybe there was a film, maybe not. We don't know. And the first screen adaptation that we can say that, yeah, this one exists was The Death of Dracula, from Hungary in 1921, which presumed lost also, but because we have the script of it, we can say that, yeah, this film exists. But the story is pretty different. We cannot say that this is a direct adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So first direct adaptation of Dracula is actually Nosferatu, a symphony of horror from Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau in 1920, shot in Germany. So if we can go to, if we need to discuss this film, we have to focus on actually the German history, and especially German political history at that time. So this film never used the Dracula name, even changed the name Count Dracula to Graf Orlok or Nosferatu. It can be seen as an escape from copyright laws. In 1920, the German company Prana Films released Nosferatu, but without permission and of Bram Stoker's wife, and even they were sued because of this. Okay, in this period, actually, not just Dracula, but many films were considered, especially from German film critic Siegfried Krekuer. Actually, these were he separated German film history, this post-war history, like before Nazi period films. So, as he said, that these films were feeling that Nazis were coming to power, so that's why there was this really dark features in the film. And of course, there is German expressionism showed the depressed of German society and the rise of fascism both. Nosferatu was not separate from this depression of the German community. Nosferatu is a more conservative adaptation than the book itself, due to gender roles, we can say. Because normally we know that our Jonathan Harker and Mina Murray in this film, Hutter and Ellen, they should have been engaged, but in this film they are married. And when his husband went to Transylvania to meet and work with Count Orlok, aka Dracula, she's waiting at home with their close friends. She's always weak. She's always needs to be taken care of. Okay, so apart from the legal issues, using the name Nosferatu instead of Dracula can be seen as a cultural sign. Nosferatu is the Slavic version of the word vampire used by Germans too. Even in the Vlad the Impaler, Kazakh Voivoda, Seyfi mentioned about the name Nosferatu. One of his characters, Professor Rasuhi, who should have been Van Helsing, says that Slavs calls the creature as a Nosferatu. So Count Orlok's appearance is more important to examine because it does not look like Dracula, which Stoker mentioned in the book. On the other hand, it does not look like any other Draculas in other adaptations. Count Dracula is known as an Eastern European aristocrat, even if he's a vampire. Stoker describes him with white mustache, sharp fangs, as the aristocratic appearance, and tall. Nevertheless, Count Dracula has looked like creature other than humans. From the beginning, his appearance is frightening. Even the ordinary and reasonable characters in Nosferatu does not look beautiful, by the way. Of course, this appearance issue is effect of expressionism. Apart from the source, the original Dracula and other adaptations, Nosferatu ends differently. Ellen, Mina, as a weak woman, she's affected by Count Orlok, and because of her love, actually we see that Count Orlok dies, but at the same time Ellen dies. So again, like in many post-war German films, like before Hitler time films, we cannot have the happy ending, But if we compare with the other films, actually, it's even like soft ending for a film.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the time is slightly running out. So if you go, please, to the conclusions, proceed to the end.
Yeah, sure. So of course, also we have this American Dracula, which shot in studio times, and we can say that it's a almost exact adaptation of the book with slight changes, but yeah, we have to say that also it's more conservative one when we compare with the others. There were other sequels after this Dracula, however, they are not direct adaptations, so that's why we can consider that the fourth main film, I'm skipping this part, that's the fourth main adaptation in the world to Dracula is Dracula in Istanbul, the Turkish version of Dracula. So what is important in here, actually, like I said, in the book we have more nationalistic view. However, in 1953, Turkey changed from one-party rule to multi-party rule, and the new government was a conservative one and more Islamic one than the others. So that's why, even though this film actually the most erotic film when we consider when we check the other Draculas, still we can see some Islamic things inside of the film, nationalist views still inside, still they're using or race, still they think that Dracula is trying to get revenge of from Ottoman Empire or from Turks again. However, also we see that they're using, for example, in Western Draculas they're using cross, and here they're using crown, for example, this kind of things. And the one important thing about this, about the film history, actually, we can see that this one on the second one is a Turkish Dracula. Actually, we can say that he is the closest one that Bram Stoker described in the film. This sharp fangs was for the first time in the screen. And the other thing is, even though it's even racist or like nationalist and Islamic version, we can say, of Dracula, however, it was at the same time, because Turkish Republic was a strictly secular country at that time, we can see that they even tried to make this erotic film and change Turkish Mina from the teacher to dancer, like belly dancer. We can say. So, okay, I think I can finish now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this interesting presentation and for bringing us this iconic and diabolical character. Now, prepare your winter clothes. We're going to the Eastern Front. Our next prelegent is Miss Yuliia Nykonenko, and she will talk about Russian films about World War II. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So my presentation is about Russian films about World War II, how they're helping to construct Russian heritage, how they're helping to read history, and how they are used to promote patriotism, especially when it's concerned the younger generation. Because they are mostly oriented towards the younger people in their early 30s, people in their teens, and less oriented towards older generation. So I will start off with the general trend. And it started about a decade ago when Russia started very forcefully to pay attention towards what's its image on the international arena and how people are feeling in the country itself, because there were turbulences and the promised prosperity that was promised by President Putin is very slow to come, and some people are getting very rich and other people are getting poorer and poorer. So there are turbulences, and there was this idea that Russia finally needs to consolidate as a nation. So the president talked a lot about spiritual unity and how there need to be consolidating ethical values and spiritual identity, and how Russian people need to not lose sight what it really means to be a Russian person. And there were several very serious and very well-funded initiatives. First of all, it's patriotic education of the Russian citizens. And they even changed the constitution to say that this was to create nationwide responsibility for the motherland in the face of future generations. So there were even changes to the constitution which are in itself a very significant move. And then there were several concepts developed that were supposed to promote the patriotic education in Russian Federation, especially among school children, among students, but also among older generation as well. And people started talking about such a thing as a purchase order on patriotism, that the Russian state is purchasing from different organizations the ability to promote patriotism, and that the idea is to portray Russian people as the legitimate heirs of victory, as a nation who lost the most in the World War II. They lost a lot of people and they suffered a lot, so they are those legitimate heirs of victory, and everyone should see them as such. And there was this very important discussion during Valdai Discussion Club. This is a discussion club where they discuss important political ideas mostly. So the main idea was that previously the Russian intelligentsia, the Russian most educated people, the representatives of the political parties, they thought that there was no need of creation of the national identity, and that it will create itself, because it will come from the grassroots, from the people, and then the people will consolidate themselves and they will understand what it is to be Russian. But somehow it didn't happen. And so around 2014, there started to be developed such an idea that this initiative needs to come from the state, and it needs to be more forceful than ever before. And they decided to take as a basis for this initiative, they decided to take this heroic event in which pretty much every family has participated. So there was this idea that they need a hero, and the hero will come from the nation itself. And this myth about a war, it became one of those bases for creation of national identity. It allowed to construct a tragic but very renowned and tangible, detailed, easily imaginable, and identifiable and very, very much believable past that everyone is connected to. So this promotion of the idea that the Soviet warrior, Soviet soldier is not just a soldier, but is a hero. And they thought that this was the main idea, and they have heroes aplenty. So there will be this new Olympus, like the mountain of heroes, like the Greek gods of the past, but reflect a new reflection on them. So how it's reflected in cinematography? Mostly it began with bigger directors like Nikita Mikhalkov, like Fedor Bondarchuk, Nikolai Lebedev. They started creating these big blockbuster films where the main topic was World War II, what happened, and they wanted to portray it correctly, because there were attempts to make it sound as if Russia was as culpable in the beginning of World War II as Germany was, the Nazi Germany was. So the Russian authorities were very unhappy about that, and they decided that films will be the best way to show that it wasn't true, to re-educate the people in Russia first and foremost, and then the people in the West, because these films are often promoted as those that are possible to be shown in the West. And these initiatives, they are supported by the Russian Military Historical Society that takes part in producing, directing, and constructing the plots in many, many films about World War II. And the World War II really takes center stage because over the last decade, they managed to produce more than 50 patriotically themed films. And in the past 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, there were more than 35 such films. 28 films were directly sponsored by the state, and they spent 201,270 million Russian rubles to finance this operation, so to speak. And it's non-refundable government grants. It means that the producers of these films don't need to repay the government. It's given as given gratuitously. The main films that happened and were shot during the last 5 years. You see some examples on the screen right now. So this is, and the Dons here are quiet. These are the titles, and you can see the posters for the films. Panfilov's 28 Man, T-34, Sobibor, Battle for Sevastopol. So these films, they really have this general idea that the Russian soldier is the hero, and how you can see that mainly is in comparison with the previous Soviet films, for example, where they showed the little things that people do throughout the day, people do in life, like eating, resting, and things like that. They completely disappear from this new type of films. The characters here, they are heroes. They are busy with heroic acts. They have no time for such mundane actions as eating or doing whatever. They are just busy saving the world. And as we see here in these examples, mostly the characters are very young. And yes, the tragic situation during the World War II was that a lot of young people went there, but they were pretty much mostly all the actors were very young, and the younger the better. And also another trend is a lot of films that were made from 2015 to 2020 were focused on children, on how children see war, on how children understand war, and on how children are portrayed throughout this tragic event. So we see here the examples, the Little Sister, a Russian youth, Anna's War, Little Soldier, and Vesuri. So they are mostly oriented for the younger generation to show that you can also be a hero, you can be smaller, you can be not as significant, but you can also be a hero, you can also engage in these heroic acts. And what's also significant is that a lot of Russian prominent politicians are speaking out about this as well. For example, a representative of the Russian Federation National Council, the Russian National Council, Dmitry Peskov, he gave an interview for one of the Russian magazines. It's called La Pensée Russe, so a Russian thought. And during this interview, he expressed this very interesting idea that I think wraps up this notion and this movement very nicely. He said that over the last decade, a lot of images disappeared from the history books. For example, the image of a Russian soldier that is hosting a flag over the building of Reichstag in Berlin. It's been removed from a lot of history books and also from Facebook. The colorized version was removed from Facebook, which sparked quite a scandal in Russia and quite a condemnation. And he said that nobody these days, nobody goes to archives to see what has happened throughout the history, what is the truth, where is this truth. Everyone moves towards the social media. Everyone wants to go to the social media and to find out about the news, to find out what is happening in the world. So the social media right now is trying to portray Russians as the enemies, the Soviet people, the Soviet army as the enemy. And he said that the main focus right now for the Russian government was to do something about it. So in a way, this film is the possibility for them to show, to demonstrate what they think was the correct portrayal of history, what happened throughout the history, how the world should see Russian people and the Soviet army and the Russian people and the Russian nation, and most of all, how the Russian people should see themselves, how they should identify with these heroes of the World War II, but they should sort of transfer this idea onto themselves and feel that they also can be heroes. They also can be this heroic people, and this idea of the Russian nation as a legitimate heir of victory in the World War II should take root and should be established as the main idea around which this whole situation with the vision of history develops. Okay, that's all for me.
Thank you very much for this presentation. This was very insightful for sure. Going even further to the east, in our travel to this panel, next will be Miss Joanna Świt with topic The Girls and the Political Japanese Popular Literature at the Beginning of the 20th Century. So, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I will share my presentation next. A little disclaimer first. My neighbors have decided that Saturday afternoon is the perfect time to do some renovation work. So if you hear drilling instead of me, please let me know and I will try to speak louder.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, can you see the presentation now?
Yes, everything's good.
Okay, great then. So not to waste any time, I will start, since the topic is the girls and the political, with why the girls and why this period of time, the beginning of the 20th century. As some of you may know, the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century is a very important time in Japanese history. So this is the time when Japan goes enormous changes, when it opens up to the world. It's also the time of the modernization of Japan, industrialization of Japan, and enormous socioeconomic changes, political changes. Obviously, those social changes were also highly influenced by the ideology of the government at the time and what the citizens should act like, the idea for what citizens should act like, what is important as the modern new Japanese to present themselves to the world. This is also the time when the education became very important, and it was noticed that the education should start to be something that the country actually takes part in. So no longer education at homes, but public education, not only for boys, but also for girls. And 1899 is the year when secondary education for girls was decreed by the government. This is also the moment when schoolgirl, as such, as a concept, and also as a time in a woman's life, being a schoolgirl, crystallizes or begins. Before that, we generally had the childhood that was more or less gendered, but it wasn't as obvious as who the female child should be, as it became at the beginning of the 20th century. So we had the childhood and then the adulthood, the womanhood. Now we also have this liminal state, which means a transitional state between childhood and womanhood, and that was being a girl, or in Japanese, shoujo or otome. Those two words were basically interchangeable. This is also the time where magazines, popular magazines for girls, started to be published. So we have this enormous market for such magazines. Girls suddenly have an identity of their own, and they need to read stories about themselves. They also want to talk about themselves, so send letters to the magazines. And such magazines created what Imada calls otome no kyōdōtai, which can be translated as a community of the maidens or of the girls. The same magazines, while providing a space for the girls to express themselves, to contact other girls, also were a space of ideology, obviously. So those magazines pushed strongly who a girl should be, how she should act, what are the characteristics of the girl. And you can see on the slide a picture of one of the magazine covers. So this was Shoujo no Tomo, which was one of the most famous and most influential ones. And those girls should be pure. This was a very important topic. This was a very important concept. And the purity meant that the girls should definitely not interact with the boys, as that could damage the purity. They should be innocent. They should be still almost childlike. And also, the important concept was sisterhood. So the girls could and were encouraged, to create communities with other girls. One of the most influential authors of the time, at least in the popular press, was Yuliia Nabuko. She was born in 1896, and she became enormously popular after the publication of her Hana Monogatari, which was Flower Tales, a collection of short stories first published in magazines for girls and later as a book. And she was considered one of the mothers of the shoujo genre, both literature and later manga and anime and so on. So the tropes that she created in these novels for girls were so influential that even in the 1970s or 80s, when shoujo manga was published, it still clung on to some of those. So the girls would often be schoolgirls in boarding schools, often Catholic, often completely cut off from the outside world. They would be being a girl would be cut off not only in time, as the time that you are in school, but also in space. The schools were different places, different spaces than the outside world. This was very visible in her literature. She published magazines for girls and later in her life for women. So basically all of her novels and short stories were about women at some time in the women's life. And she criticized some of the dominant narratives, while at the same time, as a very popular writer, creating and empowering some others. A very interesting thing that we may not expect is that Yuliia was not heterosexual. She met Moma Chiyo in 1923, and Chiyo became her lifelong partner. And this was something that was widely known by the Japanese society. This wasn't a secret. They weren't secretive about it. Everyone knew that they are living together, that they have a household together. While this was accepted or merely ignored is a different topic, but this will be quite important, the fact that Yuliia herself was not heterosexual. And before we talk about the novel that I want to introduce in more detail, I would like to briefly introduce the debut novel of Yuliia that that brought her the fame. She was barely 20 when she published it in 1916. And as I said, Hana Monogatari translates to Flower Tales. It was a collection of short stories, each focused on a flower. And either the girls who were the characters in the novel, in the stories, were likened to the flowers, or the flowers were symbolic of something that was happening in the plot. Every novel took place in a school, girls-only school, obviously at the time, and all of them were centered around some relationships between girls. Men very rarely appeared in the stories. Some of the stories were focused on the relationship between sisters, between students and teachers, between family, women in the family, but some were centered around S relationships, as they're called, or romantic friendships between the girls. The S comes from sister, but obviously those were not biological sister. Those were very close friends, usually slightly older and slightly younger girls. So, for example, as first year and second year or third year, and they were in love with each other, as we may see when we read the writings about them now. They wrote about each other, about the intense feelings about each other, about how important they are to each other. But this was not considered homosexuality as such. This was a separate category of, as I said, romantic friendships. And those romantic friendships were actually accepted by the schools and the society, because it was considered that those were just a phase. This was something that would pass after the girls finished their education, and that would actually could be beneficial to their future roles as wives and mothers, because through such relationships, they could learn from the older girls. They could also learn how to care for someone, how to express, how to show their devotion to someone. So this was considered okay, as long as it obviously ended when the school ended. Okay, so we have Yuliia as an author who I think, well, not only me, but some critics as well, think was negotiating expectations while writing and publishing her books. So she was at the same time supporting the existing order and creating this idea of the girl, the perfect girl, but at the same time putting into her writing quite a lot of criticism of the institution of marriage and of the hegemonic masculinity of her time. So the hegemonic masculinity would be the kind of masculinity that, if you embody, gives you the most benefits in a society. So it's not every man has the same rights, but the men who are a specific kind of men get the most benefits. And Yuliia wasn't very happy with what that meant. Going through to the book that I want to talk about, I have 3 minutes left. So Yaneura no Nisojo was a second novel that Yuliia published in 1919. So she's 25, around 25 at this time. And Yaneura no Nisojo can be translated as two girls or two maidens in the attic. The attic becomes a very important place, as well as a space for the girls to grow up and grow into themselves. And there are two main characters, Akiko, who is a girl who's starting her life in the city. The whole village hopes for her to embody the perfect girlishness of the time. They hope that she will succeed in the city, maybe become a teacher, but she isn't quite sure what she wants and how she can do it. And there is Akitsu, who is her neighbor in the dorm that she moves into, a beautiful and rebellious girl. And through the relationship with whom Akiko realizes who she can be and how she can find herself. And this is a love story between the two of them, unfolding mostly in the attic. And I want to look at a few stages in the novel that show exactly the coming into yourself, becoming you, and finding the strength to rebel against what is expected of you. So at first, Akiko is thrown out of her previous dorm, because she is indolent as a student and lacks belief as a Christian. She is unfit to live in the dorm. And she is very confused then. She doesn't have a place of her own. She doesn't have an identity as well. So she is just this whole mess of a person. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know where to go. And she finds a lodging, she finds a dorm, where most of the people living are working adults, and they live downstairs. Also, all of them are women, of course. And she gets a room in the attic. This is, as the dorm lady says, a temporary solution, because there are no free rooms downstairs. So she gets the slightly crampy and weird room in the attic. And she said that as the rooms become available, she should move downstairs. And it can be read as when she becomes a woman, she should move downstairs. But she loves it, even if at first she finds it difficult to find herself in the room. At the beginning, she doesn't have any light in the room because she forgot to ask for a source of light. So she sits in the darkness and is completely confused. She doesn't know what to do, where anything is, how to find herself. Yeah, but as at the same time, the outside world is also very dangerous and confusing for her. She doesn't know what role she was given. She is terrified of walking outside because the people are just bumping into herself. She is very sensitive to this, and simply scared of what the outside world means for her as a girl. And also, she criticizes quite strongly the men. As it's in the last dots, where the soldier didn't even sit yet, but he shouted, "Give me the carry." So the men around her are arrogant, and she can't see herself in a relationship with one. The attic becomes then a safe space for her, a room of one's own. So this is the first room that she had for herself since she was born. She tries to name it and to claim it as her own, and she searches for a word. Then she finds the Janura, the attic. Then she decides that she has to buy a first thing that she would own in this room. At the same time, a person who is guiding her and who's helping her find herself is Akitsu. While sitting in the darkness, she hears a voice that soothes her, and as it later turns out, it was Akitsu's. The relationship becomes closer and closer, and they share a physical intimacy as well. And this is probably one of the first novels where this was described. And this was quite not usual for the time. As relationships were okay as long as they were not physical, as long as the girls didn't have sex. So they do have, and then later, at the end of the novel, they actually decide to leave the place, but to leave the place together. So to sum it up, because I know I have run out of time, this is quite political, I would say, because while obviously, both the author and the heroines in this story are queer women who reject the expectations of the surroundings. So the author should write in a way that closes the narrative by the girls becoming women and proper women, not by them rebelling. And the girls in the narrative go through process of claiming one's space, finding kinship with other outsiders, and then deciding to live one's life happily on their own, with their own rules. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much also for this fascinating presentation. And now we stay in the Asia. The country that we're going for is not what you expect. Fourth of our prelegents is Mr. Tomasz Waśkiel with topic Historical Heroes as a response to Borat, Kazakh cinema as a nation branding tool. Please go ahead.
So thank you for the introduction. I will start from the aims of the article. I will just share my presentation. Yeah, so it's here. So I have two aims. The first aim is to just, there is some technical problems. Okay, so the first aim is to just highlight this relationship between the state-sponsored cinema and the image of the state on the international arena. And another one that I would like to argue is that one of the important tools in the Kazakhstan marketing strategy is this development of the national cinematography. And so these two words about this theoretical framework. I'm using this concept of nation branding. So it's defined by Simon Anholt as the process of designing, planning, and communicating the name and the identity in order to build or manage the reputation. And I'm also referring here to the politics of memory. This is actually like a central category for my research and for my PhD thesis as well. So here I listed some of these tools, some of these instruments, but of course they are not all of them here. And just I will today focus on this cinematography. So I would like to say a few words also about the nation branding problems that Central Asian countries encounter. So the first thing is that they face this problem of the very little level of knowledge about this, especially in the Western Hemisphere, about their countries. So even the problem, even the problematic might be to point out, to locate, or to indicate the location of these states on the map, and it's like the first step to identify the states. So it already might have been a problem, and in this context, there are these aptly words of Maria Omelicheva. So that even today, more than 20 years after the breakup, very few people, apart from US specialists, can tell the 5 Central Asian stands apart. So that the Central Asia, usually in the literature, is defined as 5 states. And another problem that these countries are facing is that they are sometimes grouped into this category of stans, and they are also grouped then with Afghanistan and Pakistan. And well, the Afghanistan as well as Pakistan, they are usually considered or they sometimes to them there is this label that they are that there is a terroristic activity, that there is this radical Islam. So it's also not so good. It's not a good label for these countries. And finally, the only label sometimes that exists in this, maybe in the mind of the ordinary citizen of the Western Hemisphere, is that they are post-Soviet countries. So also not the kind of label that these countries would like to have when it comes to this nation branding. So now I will just skip to the films finally, and the best known example, because like this problem that I mentioned about nation branding, they are also accompanied by these negative stereotypes presented in the Western cinematography. And the best known example in this case is the film Borat, Cultural Learnings of America. And in this film, Kazakhstan is portrayed as a backward, as an intolerant country, as a nation of anti-Semites, of misogynists. So this is the best known example, and I will come back to that. But there are also other films where Kazakhstan is not really portrayed so good. So this is, for example, the film with James Bond, The World Is Not Enough, or the film with Harrison Ford, Air Force One. There are also other examples like the horror The Cavern, where the Kazakhstan is portrayed as this brutal place, and the film Rollerball, where the Kazakhs are presented also not in a really good manner. So these are these examples, and before I come to these historical films, I would like to point out that probably to some extent these films and also this lack of knowledge about Central Asia, it probably influenced Kazakh elites to develop this marketing strategy. And it's hard to evaluate whether there is some direct connection, but maybe there is also this development of Kazakh cinematography was also a part of this strategy. So the first film is the film Nomad, and it was the most famous production, actually the most expensive one in the history of Kazakh cinematography. The budget of this film was $40 million. And it presents this story of Abil Mansur. He was like a ruler in the 18th century, and he was trying to unify Kazakhs and fight with Jungars. And the central, the linchpin of the film is the prophecy saying that the unification of Kazakhs may be done only by the descendants of Genghis Khan. And Abil Mansur, later in the film, he is presented as this descendant who unifies Kazakhs. The another example is the film Minbala. So the budget of this film was smaller; it was around $7 million. Anyway, it's still a lot when it comes to conditions in Central Asia and in Kazakhstan. It also presents a similar story. It happens in the 18th century, and also there is the central figure Sartai Batyr, who defends Kazakh from Jungars. Again, there are a lot of similarities between these two films because they can fulfill this function of like unifying Kazakhs, promoting this sense of stimulating this patriotism among Kazakhs. They are sometimes interpreted as a way to strengthen this authoritarian system as well because of the central role that these characters play in these films. But they can also be interpreted as fulfilling this promotional function. They were both available in English and they were both presented outside the borders. So next film is the film Mongo. Well, it's actually a co-production of Kazakh, Russian and Germany, but it was the Kazakhstan who submitted the application to the Oscar Academy for the best foreign film, and what is interesting about this film is that it's portraying Genghis Khan as a loving father, as a caretaking husband, and etc. And it completely ignored these issues of brutality and these issues of these violent conquests. And the other example is, so this is another picture from this film, but here is the very interesting one, the Kazakh Khanate. So the Kazakh Khanate, this period of existence of Kazakh Khanate, is one of the most important in the Kazakh historiography because it's sometimes treated as this beginning of the statehood. But in the 2015, there was this huge anniversary, these huge celebrations of 550 years of the Kazakh Khanate. And in the same year, this television series titled Kazakh Khanate started. So this production of this series started. Later, it was also made into the film. And well, there are plans to distribute this TV series outside the borders. There are plans to promote it also abroad. So, and it's actually available on YouTube if someone's interested, also with English subtitles. So there are another pictures from this film. And this is the most recent example. So the film Tomasz. It's about this Massagetan queen. It actually dates back before the Christ. So, whether it's connected to some Kazakh history is doubtful. Anyway, she actually reigned over the territory of today Central Asia and also of today Kazakhstan. The interesting thing about this film is the fact that it was produced in this ancient Turkic language. It's not spoken anymore, so it adds this maybe new dimension, this interesting dimension to this film. The budget was comparable to this film of Minbala that I presented before. And the interesting thing about this production is also that the Aliya Nazarbayeva, so the daughter of the first president, was the executive producer of this film. So there are, of course, another examples of the films, but I don't have enough time to present them. But just to mention the films like Gift to Stalin or Amore, the Paris song, The Road to Mother. The interesting example of this series of films actually was the series of The Way of the Leader. So it's a biographical series about the first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, but it's rather directed toward the direct, like the internal viewer, to the Kazakh, to put it simply, not for the distribution abroad. So to conclude, these films that I mentioned, they seem to direct this viewer's attention from this Soviet period, from these other negative stereotypes, to the nation with rich history and with rich tradition as well, because they are often presented this different Kazakh tradition in these films, like the yurts, like kumis, and etc. There is a lot of mythologization and retraditionalization in these films. The problem is that whether we can identify it as a part of this nation branding strategy, or is it just a part of this process of building a nation? So it's always a problem when it comes to Central Asia, how to assess that. So whether it's just for this, for internal recipients, for internal viewers, or also it's just for the, whether it was planned also for these viewers outside. So the final thing that I would like to say, that it's also hard to assess this impact of these films on perception, because well, the first thing is that there was not enough time to evaluate that, and the another thing is that well, in these rankings, Kazakhstan is rather still low in these rankings of international perception. So, for example, in the country rep track is placed on the 47th position out of 55 classified countries. And here I would like to end, so thank you very much.
Thank you also very much for this presentation. Such rare topics today we have. Back to the Western Hemisphere, we'll land in America. Last but not least, Mr. Cezary Pachnik, and he will tell us about political matters in AMD House series. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the invitation, but wait a minute, because I don't know how to allow access to my presentation. Okay, okay. By now, this is. Can you say it?
Not at the moment. No.
And now?
No, nothing. On MS Teams, there's supposed to be a share button to share your screen.
Yes, and I do it.
And there's supposed to be. You're supposed to choose from the options, either as a desktop or a window, and then it's yes. Now it works.
Okay.
Yes, everything's fine.
Thank you. So thank you for the invitation for this scientific conference, and the subject of my speech is political matters in AMD House series, between liberal manifesto and critique of American liberalism. And the basis of my analysis will be the analysis of characters of which appears in the series, because in fact, in my opinion, how are presented the characters is real political narrative in which authors want to show us. So the first character obviously is Gregor House, and what we can say about them from the political point of view. He has obviously a liberal attitude to the sexuality and drugs. He presents individualism, but he's also against political correctness, and he has in fact a negative attitude to the poorer. His approach, which can be called as the end justifies the means, and he is pro-choice, she is atheist, he is and she don't like he doesn't like family. So we can say that in fact, from the point of view from conservative population of the US, he can be viewed as a liberal demon. But in the series, he's present as the genius and the very good person. The next character is James Wilson, the best friend of Gregor House, and he is no so liberal, stereotypically liberal as House. He's ambivalent about religion. He has not so negative attitude like Gregory House. He has strong moral compass, which generally is a compass many times presented for many times confronted with attitude of the House. He's half pro-life. He is not very pro-choice like House, and he thinks that traditions, especially Jewish traditions, is important for him, and he's altruist. So by now we can say that there is a big differences between them, and the next character, which I think especially currently is interesting from the political point of view, because I think we all know what happens in the US now, is Eric Foreman. He's a self-made man who grew up in the ghetto, so he's sensitive to the racial discrimination. He's also a family man. He has strong moral compass, looking for long-term relationships, and his moral choices are shown as good choices. In fact, in my opinion, the narration in this series is showed as that this is the most positive character in this series, but he is also pro-choice. How all the team of the House. And the next character is Robert Chase. He's immigrant. His marriage is present as something positive in his life. In fact, in this series is presented that he had happy life when he was in the marriage, and after his marriage he he had intensive sexual life, but that doesn't make him happy. So in the fact, he longs for the long-term relationships, and the long relationships is presented also for him as something positive. He's also ambivalent about religion. How we know, he planned to be a priest, and he also pro-choice. The next character is Christoph, and he was childless by the time, and he had no contact with the family. And also in the case of this character, we can perceive that his transformation from somebody who thought only about money, and he didn't want to have children, and the transformation to the happy family man with children, and with children, and with intensive family contacts. The next is 13. He was bisexual, but that didn't present as something wrong. He was atheist, regardless of her terminal disease. He was hardworking and social distanced. What was presented as something negative, and she was also, we can say, family woman, was also be showed as positive. And at this time, I want to shortly say about topics which was presented also in the series, and especially the approach which was presented in the MD House series about abortion is surprising. If we know that this show was made by Fox Network, because how we know the Fox Network is very conservative, and now we can say even just Trump television, because the abortion was presented in the MD House was as something sometimes justified, and only as medical procedure, especially in the case of treat for mother's life. But in fact, if we know that House was showed as a medical genius, and we know that he was absolutely pro-choice, so we can think that generally in the MD House, abortion is presented as something positive, as something in fact good for a health. And LGBT people, and the next subject is Lgbt people, and no LGBT because in fact the trans people was not presented in this series, and we can perceive that they are presented in the series as desire for the equal rights. Also the anti-vaccine movement was presented in the series, and the anti-vaccine movement there is just showed as pseudoscience. Also the religion is in the fact presented as the nonsense, but and this is in fact something particular for American liberalism, because social inequalities was presented as something justified, and American capitalism is presented as something natural, even in the case when the access to the education and healthcare is in the decline. We have in this series many times is presented that if somebody is simple aren't afford to healthcare, so he is guilty for that. And the medical law is also present as something what can cause just obstacle during the treatment and was not supposed to be always followed. So in the conclusion, Empty House series in fact present in positive light liberalism in the economical and social field. What's shortly can be described as American liberalism. Despite of that, it's highlighted that truly liberal lifestyle, personal lifestyle, can make you unhappy, can be just bad for you, and that's especially interesting that the producers of this series is Fox Network, because how I said, the Fox Network is generally viewed as conservative network. So this is just surprising. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you also very much for this presentation. And now, thank you again for this insight of American matters. Once again, thank you all for your presentations. Now, heading to the second part of our panel, we shall start a discussion. So now you'll hear from me, dear colleague Kacper, who shall host discussion and ask you questions written by our viewers. Kacper, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you for your specific accent. You don't have to worry about. I think mine will be much clearer. So we have a few questions to our dear guests, and I also would like to read them to you. The first question is to Miss Fatma. And here's the question: have you seen the new adaptation of Dracula produced by Netflix, and if yes, are there, in your opinion, any new interesting political aspects? This question is from Mrs. Yuliia. Miss Fatma, do you hear me? Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we hear you.
Great. Sorry, microphone problems. Yeah, I heard you. So firstly, thank you. Okay, I cannot say that I examined the series, but I saw it. But in the political context, I can say that we are living in Me Too era. So it is important to have woman character in the series. So I think the series doing it very well, changing the Professor Abraham Van Helsing to Agatha Van Helsing as a woman. This can be one thing under this political aspect. And another important thing, I think also, I cannot say that it is perfect, but I can see some kind of crisis of a modern age human through Dracula himself. Like normally Dracula never suffers emotionally, but this Dracula is doing like sports, using phone. He's afraid of dying, but at the same time, kind of wants to be mortal. So I think this was also interesting, like one kind of systemic thing and another showing one character as a female. Yeah, for now I can only remember these things actually. Thank you.
Yes, I understand. Thank you very much for your answer. I think Miss Yuliia can be satisfied by it. Okay, let's go further. The next question is from Miss Adrianna Marszałek, and this question is for Miss Yuliia. Miss Yuliia, do you hear me well and clear?
Yes, I hear
Okay,
you.
also like to read the question to you. Also, if you'd like to, you can also turn off the cameras if you'd like to. I don't say you must. Okay, so here's the question: is there any tendency against this propaganda in movies among young people?
I can't say that I noticed a tendency against it, but there is this thing, what people say, we're voting with our money. So even though the state is spending a lot of funds to finance these films, and every single film that I looked at, it received the minimum of 25 million rubles, which is a significant amount of money to receive from the state gratuitously. So you don't have to return it, you don't have to repay it. That's the minimum, and the maximum was 120 million, 100 million. So they are spending quite a little bit of money if we're thinking how many films are made like this. But the return on the films, not every single one of them is successful, and not every single one of them that has received this financial support has received this support from the viewers who actually went to see it and spent their money and spent their time viewing that. So maybe we can see it from this point of view, that the films are, in general, some of them are successful, but the majority are not very successful. So they are either breaking even, or they are earning less that was spent on them. So my input is this, that maybe the young people are voting with their money and they are voting against it. But otherwise, I didn't notice any such tendencies.
All right, I get it. Also, we'll stick by you, because next question is also to you, and here's it. Is it possible to observe also a return to classic old Soviet films portraying the war on or great heroes like Alexander Nevsky?
Well, I will start with the great heroes first, I think. So the problem with the great heroes in Russian context, like Alexander Nevsky, if we take Alexander Nevsky, pretty much all of them are now Russian saints. They are actually saints in the Russian church, and you cannot film anything bad about a saint. So, and there are very few of them. Maybe if someone remembers a big scandal with the film that was made about one of the Russian czars and his lover, a ballerina from the Bolshoi theater. And the Tsar is also one of the saints in the Russian church right now. So there was a big reaction from the Russian public, and there were even theaters burning, lots of threats towards the producers of this film, towards the actors in the film. So first of all, there are very few of them. And in comparison with the number of people who participated in the World War II, they are significant like number disparity. So you can come up with any number of stories about Russian soldiers, and you can come up with any number of stories about how they participated in World War II. But on Alexander Nevsky and on any other significant historical figure, it's pretty much way less possibilities there. And also the films that were made from 2015 till 2020, I noticed that there was one film made about World War I and one film made about the Russian decabrists. So yes, there are people who are making films about other historic events and historic figures, but they are in the minority. The majority are interacting with World War II mostly. So there is that. And about the return to the previous form of the historic film, of the film about war and World War II in particular, they are making remakes. For example, And the Dawns Here Are Quiet. There is a 2015, I think, or 2016 remake. And I showed it on the poster where there were 5 women and 1 man. And they're making the remakes. It's actually a story about an all-female battalion and how they participated in World War II and about their heroism. So the actual stories can remain the same. But the way they are portrayed is changing. So if you are taking a story about like a Superman, how he's not stopping to eat, drink, to rest, and to do anything else but do heroic acts, it's pretty much the same thing is happening there. So these people are all the time engaged in something heroic. And this is the general trend. Or it's more like a blockbuster where there is a lot of action going on, a lot of different technology involved, and the action scenes are very colorful, very bright, and very appealing, especially to appeal to a younger generation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. Let's go further to the next question. The next question is from Ms. Matriana once again, and it's directed to Ms. Joanna. And this question is about Japan. And that's the question: is the past impact still visible among young women in Japan?
Thank you for the question. I would say that yes, to some extent. It's not the same expectations and not the same model of femininity, but I would say that the ideas that a young woman should be pure and innocent have somewhat transformed into the ideas that they should be cute and feminine, and not too much, which is something that we are, I think, quite familiar in the West as well, to some extent. But I think that one of the interesting things that we can say here, just to make it more or less short, is the term joshiryoku, which we could literally translate to girl power. But this isn't girl power as we understand it in, a feminist way, that the girls are strong and cool and they can do anything. This is the girl power to be feminine, and you can upgrade your girl power by learning more skills that would potentially make your boyfriend happy, and that would make you seem cuter and smaller and at the same time more attractive. So I would say that there is still an expectation that women will be very feminine and will stick to the roles. But there is less, but at least they can talk to boys while in high school now, so right? Yeah, so it's not that bad, but obviously there are still some very strong expectations toward a certain type of femininity and sticking to this pattern of behavior, yeah.
Yeah, I see. This is like the clash of civilization, the Western and the Japanese, and that's how it works.
I wouldn't say it's a clash. I would say that some of these concepts are very similar and work in a very similar way. But yeah, some details are different. Some cultural context is different, but it's not that different.
Okay, I get it. All right. So the next question is about Kazakhstan. And the question is, what is the general attitude towards these patriotic Kazakh films among the citizens? And Ms. Tomasz, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here. So I didn't conduct any research about that, but I spent there like half of a year, so I discussed some of these films with my friends, and the majority of them were actually historians, so they didn't like the majority of these films because they are not really so true, and they are not really based so much on historical events. So they have some concerns about these films. So it really depends on the film also. For example, I wasn't talking about this film Amre, It's about this opera singer. He was singing like at the beginning of the 20th century. So this film was also patriotic, and it was very like popular in Kazakhstan. I don't know whether it's also present. It's also available with English subtitles. So if someone's interested, then. But films like Nomads, they probably they were popular, but maybe not so popular as other Kazakh films. Thank you.
All right, so I think the situation here is clearly. And the last two questions are directed to Mr. Cezary, because they are about the movie series, MD House. And the first one is, do you think that the religion in MD House series is portrayed as irrelevant nonsense because the series is based on Sherlock and logic is more valued than their feelings? Question from Ms. Yuliia.
Well, in fact, the answer can be short. That yes, I think that is this is the reason for the description.
Okay, so here you have it, the answer. And the last question also is to you from our dear colleague, Ms. Agata. What are you thinking about celebration of Jewish culture present in the series versus overall theme that liberals is the best ideology? Cady and Wilson were Jews, and Jewish holidays were shown many times. Many times during the series.
Yes, in the series, the Jew traditions are showed. I think one of the reasons of that this can be that Jews in the US are liberal, and this is the one of the most important group of voters of Democratic Party. So the conclusion. So I thought now that this can be this. We can say in here that is one more proof that this series is dedicated for liberal viewers and the democratic voters viewers.
Okay, so it's a strict American movie. Also, I have the last comment, and it's a quote from Gregory House. Facts don't care about your feeling. So I think that's might be a good sum up for our debate and to end of this part. So Daniel, I'm giving you my voice. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Kasper. And I also wanted to thank you all for participating in our conference. Foremost, I'd like to thank our prelegents for bringing such fantastic topics to our conference, politics versus pop culture. We've traveled all around the world. We learned very interesting things. But most important, it was a cultural exchange, an opportunity to learn about things that we find distant from us. Also, thank you, dear viewers, and for watching, commenting through entire time, bringing this conference to life. We're heading to the end of our conference, unfortunately, but it's not the end yet. Before us lies ahead a last final panel in about 45 minutes, this time in Polish. It begins at 6:30 p.m., for which one I cordially invite all of you. Once again, thank you for participating. Have a good day.